There are 100 people on death row in the state of Pennsylvania. This is part 1 of the series. Randy Todd Hog, 36 years on death row. Hog, who suffers from Capgras syndrome, thinks that in 1982, a man who looked exactly like him abducted and killed Richard Good. A Berks County jury found him guilty of the crime and gave him a death by lethal injection sentence. According to court records, he also feels that the food he is eating in prison is sterilizing and controlling him. Hug has been on death row in solitary confinement for over 30 years, while his capital case is pending an appeal. Hug is unable to comprehend why he is sentenced to death, which has led the courts to declare him incompetent. Leroy Thomas, 35 years on death row. Veronica Hans had arranged to meet her husband and friends in a mall in the afternoon of May 8, 1987. Her spouse went in search of her when she did not show up as scheduled. He proceeded to their flat on Federal Street in Philadelphia, which was located on the top 2 floors of a 3-story duplex. He was shocked to see that both their apartment's door and the building's door were unlocked. He discovered his wife's body, partially covered by pillows and a blanket, and dressed in a bathrobe, on the stair landing of the 3rd-floor bedroom. She had been stabbed, choked, and restrained while 8.5 months pregnant. She suffered almost 50 stab wounds, some of which fatally penetrated her unborn child and crucial organs. Part of the apartment's 3rd level had been looted. The bedroom had several missing items, including paper money, pocket change, an imitation Rolex watch, Mrs. Hans' high school ring, a gold chain bracelet, more watches, rings, and jewelry, and a pair of fingerless athletic gloves. There were no indications that the flat had been broken into. A window in a bedroom was open. Mrs. Hans usually didn't open the window unless she went to look at whoever was ringing the doorbell. Leroy Thomas, who is also known as Larry Rush, was sentenced to death for the murder. Don Mitchell Tedford, 37 years on death row. After finding Donald Mitchell Tedford guilty of essaying and killing Janine Revak on January 10, 1986, a Butler County jury condemned him to death in 1987. 22-year-old Janine was pursuing a career in interior design. In October or November of 1985, she visited an interior design and decorating company in Cranberry Township, Butler County, known as The Finishing Touch. There she met Tedford, who, as an inmate at the state prison in Greensburg, had been granted work release to find employment at The Finishing Touch. Revak was interviewed by Tedford, and while she was not given a job offer at that time, she expressed encouragement at the chance and promised to stay in contact. Due to a week-long illness, Revak missed work on Friday, January 10, 1986. Her husband and friends tried to call her during the day, but they were unable to reach her. A truck driver arrived to The Finishing Touch at around noon with a delivery, but the front door was shut. The truck driver noticed a young woman in the business, whom Tedford later acknowledged was Revak. She was gone from the house when her husband returned from work, and there was no letter explaining her disappearance. He contacted The Finishing Touch at about 11:30 p.m. after trying in vain to find her elsewhere. Tedford responded and gave his name as Don. In response to Revak's husband's asking Tedford if he remembered his wife, the latter said that he did remember her and that she was a highly talented girl, but he hadn't seen her that day. Revak was reported missing to the local police the following morning by her spouse. She left her car in a shopping center parking lot, which he discovered later in the day. That same day, at approximately 12:30 p.m., 2 brothers in Washington County going small game hunting discovered a young woman's body on the side of the road. They thought she was dead because of the body's rigidity and discoloration, so they called the police. She wore a silk top, black pants, a wedding band, gold earrings, a gold necklace, and 1 mesh stocking in addition to her red jacket. She had no shoes. Her slacks were found to be unbuttoned and zippered down when the body was turned over. Her bra was pushed up over her chest, which the investigator discovered when he looked beneath her top. The jacket and pants were comparatively clean, but there were some foreign items, including thin, fiber-like material, weeds, and blood. Tedford led Revak to The Finishing Touch, where he assaulted her after luring her to meet him. Then he drove her body to the Washington County woods, where he left it for the hunters to find the next day, strangling her to death out of concern that she would denounce him for the essay. John Lesco, 28 years on death row. Lesco was reportedly using drugs and drinking alcohol around Christmas 1979, while reflecting on how horrible it was that his younger brother had been abused while living in an institution. John reportedly experienced childhood essay as well, which is why he chose to take out his anger on society for treating him so unfairly. In collaboration with his friend Mike Travaglia, he abducted Levato, a security guard, and took him to Westmoreland County, where Travaglia fatally shot him. The men were hitchhiking on the north side of Pittsburgh on a bitterly cold New Year's Day morning when 2 newcomers stopped to give them a ride. At the time, the men were engaged in an armed robbery spree out of their hotel room in Edison, Pennsylvania. They took over newcomer's SUV and abducted her as they robbed a party supply store in Indiana County. After the heist, they left their chained captive and her truck in a parking garage in Pittsburgh after shooting her twice. By late January 2, 1980, Lesco and Travaglia had recruited a 15-year-old juvenile offender called Ricky Rutherford as a new comrade, and they were prepared to carry on with their killing rampage. The three waited for a victim to show up while hiding out in front of a hot dog stand close to their hotel. William Nichols arrived after a 10-minute delay, at which point Travaglia pointed the gun at him while opening the sports car's passenger side door and taking a seat. Travaglia shot Nichols in the arm after Rutherford and Lesco entered the back seat. Then Travaglia drove out from under the hot dog stand. Lesco gave Rutherford the order to handcuff the captive and struck Nichols in the face and chest several times, injuring him. They threatened Nichols with a knife and stole his watch and wallet. Travaglia took him into a wooded location where they gagged Nichols and threw him out of the car. Then, Lesco and Travaglia belted Nichols' legs and pulled him in the direction of a hole in an ice-covered pond while Rutherford discovered a 25-pound boulder. They threw the rock on top of him after pushing him inside. After deciding to rob a convenience store with their newfound freedom, they made a stop at Travaglia's father's home, where they took another firearm and ammunition. As the group turned back towards Pittsburgh, they passed Leonard Miller, a police officer who was seated in his patrol car outside of a stop-and-go convenience store. After racing past the officer's car and honking his horn, Travaglia claimed he just wanted to have some fun with the cop. However, no chase was initiated. Travaglia spun the vehicle around, blew past the patrol car once more, and got no response again. After Travaglia sped by him 3 times, Officer Miller activated his lights and pursued him. Lesco turned to face Rutherford, telling him to lay down in the back because it might turn into a shooting gallery as they sat in the back seat. Miller forcibly pulled the sports car to the side of the road and walked up to it. Rolling down his window, Travaglia pulled out a .38 caliber handgun and fired 2 close-range shots at Officer Miller. Travaglia afterwards asserted that the shooting was an accident. Officer Miller fired back, breaking the window on the passenger side. The policeman who had been shot laid down on the ground while the 3 men drove off. After the group left the hotel, Travaglia told a friend they had shot the police officer when they later met up. Travaglia gave the guy the .38 gun, and later that evening, the companion was caught with it. The 3 murderers were taken into custody that same evening after he turned on them. Rutherford was presented with an immunity deal in exchange for his testimony. Please hit that subscribe button if you like my channel. See you next time. Bye bye.